Stability AI, we are the creators of Stable Diffusion, which was the first and still is the largest and largest breakthrough image model in the world. The last couple of years, we've generated approximately 80% of all AI images online that you've seen. We're converting that base core model for image, video, and 3D and upscaling it into professional content creation, and that's why James Cameron, as you were mentioning, invested and joined the board. And so we're working, and I worked very closely with him in my previous company. I was the CEO of Wedded Digital, and we made Avatar 1 and 2 with Cameron, and we did that on a software CPU basis. Now we're going to be developing tools together as a GPU and generative AI basis.
A fascinating intersection, and it's always wonderful here at the World Government Summit that we have people from very different specialist areas, but here on the AI Forum to have your insight is going to be brilliant, Prem. Peter, give us an insight in terms of Silo AI, some recent ventures, some recent mergers, and bring us up to speed.
Yeah, thank you. So Silo AI is a private AI lab that we founded end of 2017. I left academia with my research group, and we've grown to be about 300 AI scientists today. We basically do strategic R&D partnerships on some of the most challenging AI problems in the world, everything ranging from autonomous vehicles to smart devices, and of course, lately, large language models. We deliver a combination of open source AI models and model as a service platform. And as you alluded to, we were acquired by AMD in Europe's largest AI acquisition in the summer.
And we were speaking off stage, you have a good relationship here in the Middle East, in the UAE, in terms of the work that you're doing out here.
Indeed. I think the announcement was this week on France's largest data center between AMD and G42.
Before I bring in Charles, I'm just going to ask you, Peter, you've just flown in from the big AI summit in France. How was that? What were the big headlines?
Big headlines. Now the summit that used to be called AI Safety Summit is now called AI Action Summit. So it did put a bit of pressure also on actually focusing on actions. I have to admit that there was more focus on actually investments and action than safety. Some people would have hoped for more focus on safety, and others were happy to see sort of the commitment that is being done at the moment. Macron announcing investments of 109 billion, which is significant for France and Europe.
So you mentioned the word there, action. We will certainly have a very active panel here. Charles Quay, you're the founder of K2 Intelligence Ventures, a long, illustrious career in technology and AI. Bring our audience up to speed.
Assalamu alaikum, ni hao. Good afternoon. My background is quite unique. We'll share with you a little bit about background. I'm a third Chinese. You can probably recognize that. I'm a third Arab, actually. I was born and raised here. My first language is Arabic. And a third American, so I've had many careers in the United States. My background primarily is to take what I call deep tech and scale it to big tech. I built 4 mobile operators in the globe. Then I decided to move into mobile internet and broadband for 10 more years. And the last 14 years was artificial intelligence. I co-founded a company before this one. It's called Ceres. We basically power 1 billion vehicles in the world. We ship in 55 million cars. If you have a car that says, hello Mercedes, okay, for example, BMW used my technology. What I've realized was technology is always very interesting as you commercialize and scale. And the problem set is really, how do you deal with this technology? How do you apply it? How do you make sense of it? And His Excellency Omar encouraged me to get out of retirement again. So I built K2 Intelligence Ventures. It's a venture builder for large companies or governments as they tackle how do you actually commercialize and scale artificial intelligence. From these two gentlemen, technology. Actually, Prem was asking me to use this technology.
Use it
And
more.
use what?
I said use it more.
That's right.
Sell it more.
And how do you actually really commercialize and use it? And how do you make some sense out of it? And how do you actually scale it? So that's basically what K2 Intelligence is focused on.
And Charles, you told me off stage that you could literally conduct this whole panel discussion in Arabic, putting us all to shame. So, that's very impressive. Now, Charles, to begin with yourself and your deep insight in terms of the UAE, because you've been based here, this idea of rethinking ROI in investments, let's have some fun with it. What are some of the big key things that we should be bearing in mind?
Well, when I think about ROI, I don't really define it as return on investment. I consider it as return on impact. And when we think about this, and I have some friends in the audience, like Eric is a distinguished chartered accountant, we've been talking about return on investment plus ESG. I said, really, it's not return on investment plus ESG, it's return on investment plus return on good, which is really return on impact. We're here to actually create impact. The equation really is energy to impact ratio. How do you take the least amount of energy to create the biggest impact? And artificial intelligence really allows us to unlock that. So imagine a world where you have me using your technology to create a movie better than James Cameron, or as good as James Cameron, or me as for example, a surgeon using Sam, who's creating, robotics, surgical robotics. I can actually perform the best surgical robots in terms of the theater of operation. So this is where we are in terms of the journey of artificial intelligence. I think when I think about artificial intelligence, there's two edges to this equation. One is, I've been asked for the last 10 years, is it going to disrupt work? For the first 8 years, I said no, because I needed people to fund me. And I've concluded, actually, it is. So if you think about this, in the agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution, we've actually grown humans, population 7x, yet we only have 4% of the people working farm feeding all of us. It's quite interesting. None of us are farmers in this room. I don't think so. But yet everybody's not hungry. So imagine 25 years from now, all the work that we do today, I'd say maybe 95% of that is going to be gone. And it will be robotics. But then today, meeting Prem, I realized I can actually basically become a director.
That's right.
Actually,
I'm going to set you up.
I can actually create my own movie, which is my passion, to tell a story. So this is where it will be very disruptive in terms of taking roles away, but it's also going to unlock us to tell the human story, which is what I call four things. How do you make life longer? How do you make life happier? How do you have life prosperity? And most importantly, how do you make life purpose-lived?
So one of the purposes you described there, Charles, there's so many threads that we can pull on there, but this dream of becoming a director, Prem, is it possible? I mean, what are we talking about here? Not so much Charles himself, but this intersection that we're at.
I think I could do it. I can make Charles a director. You might have to cast me in it, because I've always wanted to, I've got all these
I love it.
fancy directors.
Deals being made on stage. We're all witnesses to this. We all want to be like
You guys heard it.
background actors here.
Well,
but yes, so let's play with that area. Let's stay in that space for that moment. This future, this crazy cross-section that we're at.
That's exactly what our goal is. Our goal is to give Charles or James Cameron the equal amount of tools to make professional content. And when I was at Weta, we made professional tools on a software basis that was running off CPUs. It was because it was pre-generative AI. We called it machine learning back then. And it was nowhere near as powerful as what we have today. But now with the power of generative AI and GPU, we can enable every artist. I think you mentioned storytelling. Storytelling is the most powerful invention of humankind. It is what makes, it's not AI, it's not any of these technologies, it's not the printing press, it's literally storytelling. And storytelling is something that's really, like you said, the human stories. I love, you said we can riff a lot off what Charles said. I can't, because he said so many amazing things there. stories are interesting. Everybody in this room never woke up one morning and said, I saw enough movies in my life. I've seen enough TV series. No one ever has said that. So it's like we have this insatiable appetite to consume or tell stories from our first memory all the way to our last. I mean, that is a huge market. So at Stability, we're just literally providing tools for those storytellers and wanting them to be able to express themselves at the highest levels.
Now, one of the other things that Charles mentioned, which directly feeds into your sector, is this reticence about what AI is going to do in terms of the workplace.
Yeah. And
of course, storytellers, creatives are at the heart of a lot of change. So as well as the ambitions and the future, there's concern, certainly.
There is. I think that ultimately, as these conversations have progressed, ultimately you realize there's going to be more jobs in the end. There's a little turbulence in the beginning, but I think ultimately when you see a technology that comes in to reduce time and money into a process, you end up with more of that product. Probably the best example of that is maybe a strange one. It's called ATM machines in the United States. When they rolled out in the 80s, every bank teller in America were completely against the rolling out of these ATMs. They said, that's what our job is. That's, we're going to lose all our jobs. And as we give withdrawals, we take deposits, and if that machine does it now, what are we going to do? Do you know what's happened since the ATM has been released? There's more jobs now as teller jobs in America than ever before. And the reason why is because, like I was alluding, they'll make more movies and TV, is that the average bank needed 30 employees to run before ATMs. Now that got reduced to 13. So therefore banks did what came naturally, they put more branches out. So if anyone lives here in America here through the 80s, you would notice that in the 80s it took 20 minutes to drive to a bank. Now there's one every other corner, and that's because they got rolled out. So not only did their jobs increase, their pay increased because what their actual job description was changed. Instead of just giving withdrawals and deposits, they became more relationship with small business owners and clientele within the community. So their skill went up, their average pay went up as well. This is an effect in economics. They have a theory. It's called the lump of labor fallacy, which is what played out for the ATMs, and I think it's ultimately what's going to play out with injecting AI into creative storytelling.
I think that's a really interesting example you share with us, so thank you so much. And it really builds on what Charles said, rethinking ROI, you called it the return of impact, and you're asking us to rethink the impact of AI. Actually, there could be some very fascinating new pathways to explore. Peter, to bring you in on the notion of ROI investments, what are some of the key metrics that we should be keeping in mind? We've spoken here about some key examples, but if we pinned it down, what are some of the key metrics?
Yeah, I think this is actually a very, very, important and interesting question, one that we've been addressing during the sort of past 10 years as an AI lab. I mean, you gave a lot of different dimensions to that, but let me maybe simplify. I mean, we're an AI lab that we've helped others build better products. That's basically what we've been doing for the past 7 years or so. When we talk about ROI, I would sort of simplify. I mean, McKinsey Global Institute said that there's sort of, say, 15 trillion of value to be created. Then the question is sort of, how do we get to that value potential? It's real economic value, right? And the way they calculate that, right or wrong, or whether the number is right or wrong, I don't know, but it's a number. That's through productivity and efficiency. And but that's not entirely how we look at the world when we build products. So I think you should basically turn it the other way around. The ones that are building products, those are usually going for revenue. They're going for competitive edge. They're usually building new features into their vehicles or smart devices or applications. it's a revenue investment. And then eventually those that sort of, go for better products, they deliver productivity and efficiency ultimately, which gets you to that sort of big number at the very end. But when you think of this, sort of these two steps, then the reasoning in actually making those investments is very different.
And I believe that you said off stage this idea of assessing investments. There's a difference between building and buying, and there's a different perspective accordingly.
Exactly. So, I mean, they're the first step. Those that are investing in R&D, they're building. And then eventually the ones that are sort of using the best products on the market, using your products, for instance, they are getting productivity and efficiency.
Yep.
Interesting, that's really fascinating. Charles, we were speaking off stage about the matrix that you use in terms of assessing humans versus AI. Give us an insight in terms of this. I think this might be an interesting pathway to explore.
Okay, so I built my career in terms of technology to solve real problems. And I'm going to use Chinese now, which is there are 9 characters that defined my entire career in terms of how do I take a product or service that can build very profitable businesses. 想得到，用得上，离不开。Every single company, every single country has to go through these phases. 想得到, you are aware of it, you know of it,用得上, you've used it, you've experienced it. 离不开, you cannot live without it. You can think about that from the internet, you can think about that from ATM, you can think about that from water, whatever. Okay, but with artificial intelligence, it's a little bit more complicated. How do you go from phase 1, be aware of it, phase 2, use it, phase 3, cannot live without it? I call it the value matrix, which is high value to low value, high complexity to low complexity. Engineers like to solve high complexity problems. Business guys, we want to have high value problems. So I forced engineers to use high value problems, low complexity first. Why? Because you gain confidence, you learn from it, you build a framework, and then you solve the high value, high complexity. Apple does that perfectly. In terms of what is value, there are 3 equations, very simple equations. Very, very simple. I love the ATM example. 3 things when you're talking about a world of artificial intelligence. We've been living in a world of human intelligence wrapped around information storage and retrieval. When you go to artificial intelligence, you're basically augmenting human with synthetic intelligence. But when do you actually replace humans with synthetic intelligence? It's three steps. I've always used 3. Easy to remember. 1, it has to be more accurate than a human being. So if the ATM machine, you go in there and you say, give me $100, it gives you 55, you're not going to be happy. 2, it needs to be faster than a human being. If you go to the ATM and actually click, 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 and 2 hours later you get it, you're not going to use it. 3, it has to be cheaper than a human being. These 3 matrices, just remember those. You have to have a value matrix to complexity. You have to be more accurate. You have to be faster, and you have to be cheaper. So if you think about all the applications today that you can imagine with artificial intelligence, you apply this framework within the context of your business, within the context of your government, it becomes much easier to decide what to do first, second, and third.
So if we take the framework that you've outlined there, Charles, and we apply it and a business decides to go down that path, Prem, if I can bring you in, this idea of scaling AI projects and overcoming the common pitfalls, what would you identify from pilot to production stage are some of the things that businesses should be aware of, and where could we look for the solutions?
Well, it actually, the answer to that goes into my own matrix for where I would use AI and where I wouldn't use AI. So I have the same matrix.
We didn't rehearse this.
We didn't rehearse this.
I didn't.
Well, I have the same approach to the matrix. I have my own matrix, but it's actually slightly simpler, and it actually applies perfectly to film production.
Are you also going to be using multiple languages to embarrass us all? Because
I mean,
Charles
seriously,
is already with his Chinese and his Arabics and his English.
I mean, what is going on over there?
I know.
I mean, this guy.
I know you didn't plan it, but we planned this chemistry because we knew you guys are at the cutting edge. So Prem, we want to hear your matrix.
To keep up with Charles, I need an LLM up here so I can start.
James can tell you what.
I love it.
Someone give me something here. I can.
Well, you have our undivided attention in English, so go ahead.
In
Prem.
English, if you don't mind. So mine is pretty simple. If I want my kids to do it, if I want my kids to do that job, then I think the human should do it. If I don't want them to do that job, I think an AI should do it. So think about if you're a truck driver, that's not a great job. There's a higher rate of cancer because they have sunlight on one side of their head for 14 hours a day. It's probably not something that I wouldn't want my children to do. Or in the film industry, there's the thing called paint and rotoscope, which rotoscoping is it's like needle pointing. It's like, think about doing something in a film that's by pixel, by hand, by frame. It's something that is non-creative, wholly, and within the creative community. That should be done by an AI. And in fact, if this was a group of rotoscope artists, they probably would agree. 98 out of 100 would say, yes, we don't want to do this, because they got into rotoscoping to go into something that was more creative, more towards the storytelling, which is the top of the pyramid. So if we get rid of those, that needle pointing or speed it up with AI, it just all boats rise, because all those rotoscope artists and paint and rig removal artists will then start going up the food chain to where they got into the business in the first place. So I just think about my kids, Mia and Karen. Do I want them to do it? No. Let's figure out an AI to do it.
And I think the interesting example that you give there in terms of the media world, the artist world, can also be applied to the health sector. Often AI, the reason that there might be some reticence in that medical field, but it's seen as a way to provide more efficiency in a GP surgery to allow them to actually have more time with patients. So you're saying actually allowing the artist to actually have more affinity with the work rather than the technical side.
That's exactly right. And that's 100% correct. And even when a director has to kind of suspend their creative mind, because it takes so long to get shots back. An average shot in a movie is 4 seconds. It's not long. That 4 seconds for very complex movies like in Marvel movies or Avatar 2 could take 3 months to return. And that director has to then go back in time to kind of figure out that artist intent in that moment. It's extremely challenging, this kind of ping-ponging back and forth. So even they could stay within that creative moment if they could just see it so much faster. We've already created certain workflows at Stability that have reduced these mind-numbing sort of workflows from months down to seconds already.
Okay, that's really interesting. And you said average shot time is 4 seconds, and we've got limited time on stage. So I'm just going to press ahead with some of the big themes that we've already explored. Peter, scaling from pilot to production, what are some of the common pitfalls? What should we look out for, and what could be some of the solutions?
Yeah, I think in many cases the problem is to basically think of that as AI, when in most cases it's basically building products that users love. And whether there's AI or not, maybe. And if we specifically think about those products that benefit significantly from AI, I'd focus more on actually building digital product, building a digital service, and then after that sort of thinking of how you inject AI into that. And when you go from pilot to sort of production and scale in production, if you start off with sort of, finding an AI pilot or AI use case, and then sprinkling a little bit of AI solutions across the enterprise, it's usually already sort of quite challenging. And the way I sort of think of the world, I think, as many of us know, Mark Andreessen said in 2011 that software is eating the world. Well, I think he referred to companies like Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, Google, and so forth. And I think it's easy now to say that those predictions, they were predictions, were Correct, right? And that relied on sort of network effects and platform economy effects and so forth. So every single user adds value and delivers a better product and eventually gets more users and so forth. And what I think is happening today is that you're just adding AI to that, and it's not every single user, but it's every single user interaction that is adding data, which is eventually giving you better models, which gives you better products and so forth. So eventually I believe that the best place where you can create most value is scalable digital products and injecting AI into them eventually.
No, that's a really fascinating point, and you make a very astute point that AI isn't necessarily needed to be at the heart of everything. There needs to be something that can be scaled, and as you say, providing best value. Charles, I'm going to bring you in on this point.
In terms of scaling, I think Peter said it very well, but the way I think about it is, I'm going to steal a term from Trump, MAGA, making automation great again. The way I think about automation,
you need
really
a hat.
three things.
You need a hat with it.
Three things. One is, and all of you guys know this, when it comes to actually artificial intelligence, computation. You have to have very good, efficient computation. Peter solves that, basically, with AMD. Really building really good semiconductors, data center, efficiently run from what I call from energy to actually computational tokenization. You need algorithms, really, to process the information. And I think Frame does that very well with his algorithms. So those will be specialties. But most companies, most governments are going to be focused on the application layer. And the application layer, you got to be AI first. MAGA, AI first. Just remember that. Make automation great again, AI first. What does that mean? That means you have to make your core competency, your organization has to be AI first. How do you restructure your organization to think about human and synthetic agents? And the single most important thing of every government, every enterprise, every person is how do you process the data? How do you aggregate the data, sort the data, process the data? As if I'm going to make a movie, what is my data? Is the story, the beginning, the middle, the ending. How do I actually tell the story? How do I organize the images? How do I organize the songs? How do I organize the themes? And I use his technology to do that. With his technology to make it cost effective. Just think about this. At the end of the day, data processing is the key, in my opinion, for scaling. And you have to have the right organization to really understand how do you actually process the data. It's usually the human factor and the human organization prevents you from scaling.
So that's a really fascinating point for us to actually wrap things up. We've got a few minutes on the clock, and I really want to hear from each of you about a call to action, rethinking ROI investments. We've heard about making automation great again. I think that's going to be like a buzz here now at the World Government Summit. We're going to rebrand this session as MAGA. Data processing, Prem, algorithms was referred to, but where else can we explore in terms of future-proofing investments?
Yeah, I love the title of this. We talked about it off stage, the ROI, because ROI is my favorite 3 letters in the English alphabet. I think ROI is the ultimate truth serum. You know, it comes down to the 3 factors that are the most important to judge success. It's the most important statistic. It's how much you're investing, how much you're returning, and how long it took you to do that. And to me, there's no more truth in business than that. You're as good as your track record says you are. So I think that is the best thing. And I think that there's a lot to be learned in the AI community for that right now, because there's these gigantic numbers that people are raising and these huge rounds and like these big valuations. That has nothing to do with ROI. They think that's a success. That has everything to do with liquidation preference. It's just crazy. That's all that is. Of course you got a big check at this crazy valuation because they have a lick pref over you. So to me, I think we've got to stop that and just come down to ROI, which again, I think is the ultimate truth serum, and that's exactly how we should be judged.
So of the truth serum, it's how much you're investing, how much you're returning, and how long it takes to see that back. Brilliant.
100%.
I really love the way that you pulled that all together. Peter, he set the bar very high for you. We want a MAGA type, snippy takeaway from you.
You better be good, Peter. No pressure, Peter.
Take it home, Peter.
You got me and Charles you're dealing with here, okay? This is a heavy, heavy stack.
It's a pincer movement, but Peter can rise to the occasion.
Let's see.
I actually, I was also almost giving a compliment to you, but
You can still give the compliment, Peter. Don't worry.
and my angle was a little bit different. So, I mean, I said earlier that I think you should build software at the core, and then eventually AI at the core of that software, and that's sort of how I believe AI is going to create value in the future as well. And you know, speaking of ROI or value or how impact or however you define it. But then if we look forward, I mean, now for the past 2 years, everyone has been talking about chatbots and assistants. And now for the past few months, people have been talking about plateauing effects and so forth. And, you know, I think LLMs and assistants will continue to become better and better. But what I'm sort of, if I look into the future, and that's where, you know, I think you are providing one use case when it comes to movies and entertainment, but we will see so many different modalities, like life sciences, biopharma, we're seeing material sciences today, we're seeing robotics, autonomous vehicles, we're seeing now world models, and that's opening up so many new opportunities, especially with the latest technology that is being developed today.
So I think you did win the ticket there because you give us a different perspective, and that idea of building software really at the core, and at the core of that building in the AI capability. So I think it's fascinating. Charles, you gave us MAGA. Can you build on MAGA? Can you outdo yourself? Is there another language that we have not heard you speak?
Well, I think really at the end, you know, we exist here to be impactful. And, you know, Pram and I agree strongly. The way we become impactful is we leave our journey as our legacy. So the legacy of your company, the legacy of your country, the legacy of yourself is the journey. Artificial intelligence is here to stay. It's a tool that allows you to make your journey more efficient, scalable, global. And this, in my opinion, is the moat for your country, for your company, for yourself. As the world becomes hyper-competitive, this is the moat. So this is what I would leave you with. MAGA, moat, AI first.
That's brilliant, fantastic. And on that note,
I love it.
we can't possibly surpass that. So
It's the best.
all that's left for me to say is Prem, Peter, Charles, thank you very much for your wisdom, your insights, and your time today. To our esteemed audience, thank you for joining us. The gentlemen are extremely approachable. Any questions you have, do corner them, because they'll be here at the World Government Summit. It's brilliant to have you here, and I would really love to see you back here on the stage with more updates and more insights, perhaps some more languages. You know, we need to make him a director.
I mean, seriously.
Absolutely. We need to all be in this film that Prem's going to be pulling together. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, please give my panelists a big round of applause.
Thank you.